My sister didn't even glance at me. Not when I walked into the auditorium. Not when the chancellor read her name. The university gymnasium had been transformed into a glittering hall of pride and expectation. Golden drapes, a polished stage with a deep blue banner reading Class of 2025, and rows of black-robed graduates lining up in perfect symmetry. The air buzzed with perfume, clapping, and the occasional burst of camera flashes. But I stood alone near the back, far from the reserved seating, hidden among strangers. They told me I wasn't welcome at the family row. Not directly, of course not. It came in whispers, in signed emails. But the message was clear. You understand, right? This is her moment. You've had your choices. I hadn't planned to come. I told myself I wouldn't. But something in me, call it foolish hope, brought me here. In my plain suit, hair tied back like always, I looked nothing like them. My mother in her sleek champagne dress, diamond earrings catching the light. My father upright, stiff, pride barely contained. And Danny, my sister, walking across the stage with her honor medal shimmering under the spotlight, her smile flawless, radiant. When she stepped up to shake hands with the chancellor, the crowd erupted. Except me. My hands stayed at my sides. My throat clenched. I watched as my own parents rose to their feet for the standing ovation, my mother's voice shrill with pride. That's our girl. No one looked at me. I wasn't a shadow, I was a void. It wasn't just the seating. It was the way the family greeted each other when they arrived, laughter, kisses on cheeks. Even cousins I hadn't seen in years embraced like they'd been waiting for this. When I nodded at Aunt Clara, she blinked, hesitated, then smiled at the air beside me. I found a seat near the aisle. Just a metal chair, slightly wobbly. Around me, other families clutched bouquets and wore buttons with graduates' faces on them. I had nothing in my hands, just an old ID badge in my pocket, just in case. You made it, someone murmured behind me. I turned. A janitor, someone I didn't know, pushing a mop bucket and nodding toward the stage. Family up there? I smiled bitterly. Something like that. The music changed. The chancellor called her name. Danielle Claire Hastings, summa cum laude. And as Danny walked forward, her heel clicking with confidence, her eyes scanned the crowd, just once. She looked over me, right through me, like I was air. The applause thundered. I didn't move. And in that moment, sitting in a folding chair under cheap lighting, I remembered I wasn't even supposed to be here. Danny made sure of that. They always said Danny was the smart one, the charming one, the one who had potential. I was the problem child. It started when we were kids. Danny won awards in elementary school for her science projects, got picked to lead school assemblies, always had perfect grades with glittery stars stuck beside her name. She was sunshine at every dinner table, the golden child who made our mothers smile glow with pride. I was different. I talked back. I asked questions no one wanted to answer. When Dad raised his voice, Danny shrank back into her corner with her books. I stared him in the eyes, and when the shouting stopped, it was always me who got blamed for the noise. By the time I turned 15, I was already used to the phrase, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Danny never said it, but she didn't have to. She smiled with sad eyes when I came home with bruises from fights I didn't start. She offered me her notes when I failed math. But her kindness always felt like charity, soft and careful, never real. We shared a room, but not a bond. The summer I turned 17, I left. It wasn't a dramatic departure. No slamming doors, no screaming match. Just a quiet night, a packed duffel bag, and a note that said, "Don't worry. I'll be fine." I wasn't. For 2 years, I floated from place to place, slept on couches, worked late-night jobs, skipped meals. I saw things that scraped the innocence right out of me, but I never called home. Not once. Eventually, I found my way to a small security training program run by a quiet man named Harper. He taught me how to listen better than I spoke, how to look for what wasn't being said. He saw something in me, something no one else ever had. And he told me about a special initiative, government-sponsored, covert, life-changing. I said yes without thinking. What followed was years of training, more intense than I could have imagined. I learned to read people, decode language, hold a gun, and, hardest of all, stay silent. I took every assignment they gave me. Never flinched. Never hesitated. They didn't know I was running from something. Or maybe they did. I climbed fast. Quietly. No press. No graduation photos. Just mission after mission. Performance reviews stamped exceptional, and a badge that didn't carry a name in public. My Real title lived in files locked behind 5 levels of clearance. Meanwhile, Danny was becoming the face of the family. She got into a top university. Dad took out a second mortgage to help pay. At least, that's what everyone believed. She posted polished pictures of herself at rallies, galas, and student summits. She became the family's proof that they were doing something right. No one asked about me, not even when Aunt Clara bumped into me at an airport security checkpoint in D.C. Her eyes widened, but I raised a finger to my lips before she could speak. She nodded. We never talked again. Still, I checked in. From afar. I knew about Danny's scholarships, her minor in international studies, her summer internships. I watched, silently, as she stepped into a future that looked flawless. And then the email came. A formal invitation to her graduation. From the university. Not the family. There was a section on reserve seating. A field left blank for me. I hesitated for a week. I told myself I was over it, that I had outgrown them. But the night before the ceremony, I landed at JFK on an emergency return. A mission had just wrapped. I could have flown straight back to D.C., but something pulled me to that auditorium. I didn't wear a uniform. I didn't bring any medals or credentials. I just came as I was, silent, invisible, and unwanted. I didn't expect to be welcomed. But I didn't expect the cold to be that sharp either. At the ceremony, I sat still while my parents clapped for the girl they raised. I kept my eyes down while they toasted her achievements. And when the speeches began, I remember the last words my mother said to me years ago before I vanished. You're making your bed. Just don't expect anyone to lay in it with you. She was right. I didn't expect anything. But as the ceremony dragged on, I kept thinking, if they knew what I'd done, what I'd become, would it even matter? Or had they already made up their minds about me? The applause echoed again as Danny received another award. She bowed gracefully. Her smile melted the room. I stayed seated, and I waited. After the ceremony, the crowd poured into the courtyard outside the auditorium. There were canopies set up with refreshments, soft jazz playing through speakers, and a row of long tables stacked with cupcakes and champagne flutes. The graduates swirled among family and faculty, taking selfies, hugging professors, posing with friends. The air smelled like cut roses and sweet icing. Laughter rose and fell like waves. I stayed near the back, in the shadow of a support pillar, fingers pressed to the cool concrete, heart strangely steady. Danny stood surrounded by a sea of admirers. Her graduation cap was gone now, revealing her perfectly styled hair. She held a bouquet of lilies and grinned as our mother adjusted her necklace for the photos. My father was talking animatedly to a university dean, no doubt explaining how hard she worked and how we always knew she'd go far. No one looked for me. I was invisible. Again. Until someone did. It wasn't family. It was him. Agent Marcus Field. He didn't come with sirens or a full detail, just a sleek black sedan that rolled to a quiet stop at the edge of the lot. No flashing lights. No need. He stepped out alone, wearing a dark suit with a faint pin on his lapel that only a few would recognize. He scanned the crowd with military precision, then locked eyes with me. His presence was subtle but magnetic. People turned instinctively, not out of recognition, but deference. Like something in them knew they were in the presence of authority. I moved to intercept him before he got too close. "Field," I said quietly. "I told command I was off duty." "You were," he replied. "We need you back. Now." My spine straightened. "What's the op?" He didn't answer immediately. His eyes flicked past me, toward the celebration. "Intel came in an hour ago. Joint Task Force needs you at the HQ. But that's not why I'm here personally." I frowned. "Then why?" He exhaled, took a step closer, and said it, softly but clear. "She paid the tuition." Quietly. I blinked. "What?" He nodded toward Danny. 2 years ago. Through a third-party shell. Quiet routing. Never told anyone. I stared at him, stunned. "How would you even know that?" "I didn't. Until your security clearance got flagged for travel yesterday. An analyst pulled the financials during the sweep. Your sister covered over 30% of your academy fees. And I think you should know. I couldn't breathe. He added, that's why I'm here in person. Thought maybe this wasn't just a routine pickup. He turned, about to leave, then paused. Command's waiting. Car's ready when you are. I looked back at Danny. She was laughing now, champagne glass in hand, my mother beaming at her side. She looked so at peace, so perfectly settled into her world. And then, for the first time all day, she looked at me. Our eyes locked across the courtyard. The noise around us dropped away, like a film reel muting its soundtrack. For a second, she didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just stared, face unreadable, bouquet held tight to her chest. I took a step toward her, and that's when the dean tapped his glass with a spoon. The crowd hushed. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, let's raise a toast to the extraordinary Danielle Hastings, whose excellence, leadership, and grace set the bar for future generations. Excuse me. A single voice cut through the air. Firm. Commanding. Agent Field had moved into full view of the crowd now, standing just beside me. Everyone turned. The dean frowned. Sir. Field walked forward without hesitation, cutting through the circle of graduates and guests. His eyes scanned the audience until they landed on me again. Apologies, but I'm under orders to retrieve Officer Hastings. A beat of silence. Someone laughed nervously. Field continued, louder now with steel in his voice. Special Agent L. Hastings. Department of Counterintelligence, Eastern Command. Murmurs rippled. Eyes widened. Your team is in position, Field added. Command needs your assessment on the Zone 7 briefing. Immediate extraction. He paused, then, just loud enough for the silence to hold its breath, said, Your sister already cleared the tuition. Quietly. A gasp somewhere in the crowd. Danny's mouth opened. Just slightly. My father took a slow step back. Field turned to me. Ma'am, your vehicle is waiting. I didn't move. Not right away. Every eye was on me now, on the daughter they forgot, the sister they erased, the officer they never saw coming. I looked at my mother. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. Then Danny stepped forward. Her voice cracked as she whispered, You joined the Bureau. I nodded. Her eyes welled with something between pride and guilt. And in that moment, just for a moment, there was no crowd, no past, no ceremony. Just two sisters, and everything we never said. The silence held for longer than it should have. Dozens of guests stood motionless, their champagne flutes suspended midair, unsure of whether to sip or speak. The only sound was the wind rustling the canopies and the low hum of the sedan's engine waiting at the curb. Field remained still beside me, his hands clasped behind his back in that stiff but respectful stance reserved for officers addressing their superior. His face betrayed no emotion, but I knew what he'd done. He hadn't come to fetch me because of protocol. He came to reveal me. Slowly I stepped forward. Every pair of eyes followed me. My heels tapped against the stone as I crossed the courtyard, the space between me and my family shrinking by the second. I could feel the heat of their stares, my father's disbelief, my mother's confusion, the dean's stiff awkwardness. Danny stood frozen. I stopped just a few feet from her. Her hand still gripped the bouquet like it was the only thing anchoring her to the ground. You paid for the academy, I said quietly, just for her. She swallowed hard. I didn't want them to know. They wouldn't have understood. A beat. And you, she added. You're an agent? I nodded once. My unit leader, I gestured to Field, just blew 6 months of discretion to tell me that. Danny looked at him, then back at me. I didn't expect you to come, she whispered. You made that clear. She flinched slightly. Our mother finally spoke. You're in the FBI. I turned to her. Yes, ma'am. Counterintelligence. Tier 4. Her mouth opened, then closed again. The dean was still holding his glass, unsure if he should continue his toast. Field saved him from the awkwardness. Special Agent Hastings, he said again, this time with emphasis. HQ requests your immediate presence. The classified intel package is en route, and the brief begins in 30 minutes. Another hush, and then came the moment I'll never forget. A voice, deep and unfamiliar, cut through the crowd. From behind the crowd, emerging like a figure from a dream, a tall man in military dress stepped forward. A few heads turned, recognizing the stars on his collar. It was Commander Sloan, Deputy Director of Joint Intelligence Operations. He had no reason to be here. Yet here he was. He strode straight to field, nodded once, then turned to me. "Agent Hastings," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Your presence has been requested at the Pentagon. This comes directly from the director. We'll need your analysis of the Belarus files by nightfall." Every breath in the courtyard stopped. Danny's bouquet slowly lowered. Then, without hesitation, Commander Sloan turned to my father. "You raised a hell of an agent," he said. My father blinked. He didn't reply. Sloan didn't wait for one. He turned to me, extended his hand. "Thank you for your service." I shook it, and in that simple gesture, the entire narrative of my life shifted. I wasn't the forgotten sister anymore. I wasn't the one who made her bed. I was the agent called from a graduation by the deputy director himself. People began to murmur. Some clapped, timid at first, then louder. Professors whispered to each other. Students pulled out their phones. Photos snapped, but I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at Danny. She didn't smile. She just stepped forward, eyes glassy, and said, "I never told them because I didn't want you to owe me. I did it because you were the only one who ever protected me." My throat tightened. Field stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Ma'am, your ride is ready." I nodded. I turned one last time to the family who had written me off, and they said nothing, but their silence said everything. As I walked toward the waiting car, the crowd parted from me like water. The girl who didn't belong had become the woman no one could ignore. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need to prove anything. The sedan door closed with a quiet, final click. I sat back, the leather cool against my spine, my eyes still locked on the shrinking figures in the rearview mirror. Danny stood at the front of the crowd, unmoving. My mother's hand was still clutching her pearl necklace, her mouth slightly open. My father's face was unreadable, eyes squinting like he was trying to decipher who I had become. Field sat beside me, silent, his tablet on his lap, already lit up with the preliminary files. But I wasn't ready yet. I wasn't thinking about the mission. I was thinking about her. Danny, the girl who used to sneak cookies into my backpack on mornings I skipped breakfast. The girl who turned her head when our father raised his voice, but never said a word when I stood my ground. The girl who sat silent when I left, but years later wired money she didn't have, through anonymous accounts, just so I could find a different kind of future. They all thought I disappeared because I was angry, but really, I left because staying meant drowning in their expectations, living under the shadow of someone else's pride. I didn't know she had lit a path for me. Quietly, secretly. "Status update," Field finally asked. I glanced at him, nodded. "Let's go." He tapped the screen, launching a flurry of briefings, maps, names, threats. But even as he spoke, my mind drifted back, to that courtyard, to the stunned silence, to the way Danny said, "You were the only one who ever protected me." It hit me then. She remembered. All those nights I'd stand between her and our father's rage. All those times I took the blame, so she could keep her gold stars, her perfect record. Maybe it wasn't forgotten. Maybe it wasn't lost. Maybe that's why she paid the tuition. Not out of guilt, but because, in her own way, she had been trying to protect me too. The car sped through the city, heading toward the private terminal where a jet waited. There was intel to review, reports to submit, lives depending on what I decide in the next 12 hours. But inside, something softened. Something cracked open. I thought about stopping by her apartment someday. Not soon. Not dramatically. Just eventually. Maybe I'd bring the coffee she liked. Maybe I'd say thank you. But not yet. Not now. For now, I had a job to do. As we turned onto the highway, I looked out the window and saw the sunset breaking through the clouds. Soft, golden, full of weight. And I remembered her face, Danny's eyes finally meeting mine. After all those years. After all the silence. And as the city blurred by, I thought, that was the first time my sister truly saw me. But by then, it didn't change who I'd become. And maybe that was the point.